independence is the right word. I was here, you were here. We know what it... I'm assuming you were here because you wouldn't have, I think, said independence so comfortably.
I mean, when the big demonstrations happened,
Or even,
I wasn't here.
You weren't here?
No,
oh, okay.
No, I was in France.
You were in France.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's even more interesting for me because I
came back in the summer
of 2005.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had at least knew what had happened and you knew enough of what had happened.
Oh yeah, of course, and of course.
Rabih, I need to fix my posture for this one.
He's getting excited.
You've made a shitty week into such a lovely. You've corrected so many hours of incorrect back and forth, and now it's correct. Yes, nobody should be ashamed of it either, and I think too many that are steering the ship, at least in terms of persuasion and narrative or trying to explain the tragedy, they willfully ignore that was a magical moment.
Yeah.
Nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah.
And I get lost in people that... This is not necessarily us only. It can be visiting dignitaries or whatever. Anyone with leverage in the story or influence, that they write it off as something that was on par, sort of like you have a March 8 issue and then you had the March 14 issue.
Yeah.
And they
politicize it and it becomes just these two parties, coalitions of parties against each other. That's it.
And they say, this is the one thing that they say, we don't want to be either that or that, either March 8 or March 14. And I think what they're saying is that they don't want to be what they turned out to be.
Yeah, they don't want to associate with the parties that turned out brandishing the flag of March 14. That's what it means.
But they ignore that was a real attempt at getting things right.
Yeah.
And it's more than a protest, it was an independence movement.
Yeah. Well, but this happens a lot with it certainly happens with somebody that you've hosted, by the way, with like Sami Jmail, and you have a lot of people who say, who don't want to associate with him or the Kataib because of particular events during the Civil War. Right. And I understand his frustration because a lot of them are like, but why doesn't he let go of the party and changes the party or whatever?
Yeah.
But his argument, which is a very fair argument, is the party is not just about that negative point that you're talking about. There's history, there's glory, there's accomplishments, there's a struggle to the party, and I'm not willing to just turn my back on it because of something that happened, something bad that happened in a context of war when nothing good was happening anyway. So I fully understand that the people, this brings us back to something we were talking about earlier, which is the death of nuance.
Yes,
it's either this or that. If you, I don't know, like if
either with October 17 or against it.
Yeah.
And by saying you're reflecting on March 14, you've surrendered the principles for the revolution.
Right. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. No room for nuance. No room for middle grounds. If you're, I don't know, if you're like you're supposed to not like, for example, Donald Trump, and Donald Trump says something that sounds reasonable and you agree with, and you say, oh, I agree with what he says, automatically you're labeled like a Trump supporter.
Right.
Yeah.
But
this is everywhere.
I'd like to think March 14 was so much better than Donald Trump.
Oh yeah, no, I was giving an example.
No, I know, yeah. But I mean, there's something about, I think it may be an age gap, maybe, that, and it could also be that people that just we're not here, they don't know it.
But also, most people, and this is one of the main problems in Lebanon, by the way, agreeing on who our enemies are. And so when you have half of the country that considers that we have two enemies, we have Israel and at least Assad's Syria, and on the other hand, the other half of the country that considers that no, Lebanon has only one enemy, which is Israel, and the other is a sister, that's a problem. People who did not grow up under the humiliation of the post-war Syrian occupation.
Yes, exactly.
So who did not go through that trauma.
Yeah.
So they don't really measure the gravity
Right.
of that occupation and the importance of the events on March 14th, basically.
So that build-up is what they missed out on.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the disagreements come in, because it's almost I live in this world. If you defend the principles of March 14, you're losing half of your audience.
Yeah, because you're either Uwait or Mustaqbal or Raida. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
And even though 16 years ago, we didn't think of those names the way we do now.
Yeah.
If you say Kata'ib, since 1930, whatever, 1936 until today, you take any decade, you say that name, it'll bring up different
Yeah, of
reactions,
course, of
right?
course.
Same applies to, I think, anything. If you
Yeah.
say Mustaqbal, if you say Uwait, look, you can say any name in this country, and depending on when it is, it'll bring up something else. We did
Right.
not have this anti-establishment sentiment 16 years ago.
Right.
But I think it's a misunderstanding, because there's something wrong if you can't at least appreciate the attempts that were made before, and it's our generation too.
Yeah.
It's not just our parents. We
Yeah.
were there too. I think if you can't build on what was tried before, this really is a lost cause. Because I see no shame in standing up for this country's independence. Yet it almost seems sacrilegious sometimes to say it.
Yeah.
They're like, no, you have to talk about other things first. I think 2005 was exactly how you said it, an independence movement.
Yeah, it was. I mean, to me, it is a second independence.
Yeah.
And that's the one that I relate to because I was here.
Yeah.
I don't relate to the one in 43.
Right, exactly.
I studied it in history books.
That's actually well said. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I was here. Not physically at the protests, but I was here, and it was part of my life. I was watching it every day on television. I was talking to my friends who are all
Yes.
activists on the ground.
Yeah.
And when I came back in the summer, it was a different Lebanon.
Even though the bad stuff had already started, but it was a better place than January 2005.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that just should not be ignored. I'm glad you said it. It's rare for me to hear this unexpectedly.
And Lebanon in the 90s was super gloomy. It was dark.
When did
People
you
don't
leave?
know it.
When did
2002.
2002.
I couldn't wait to leave.
Yeah,
like
so-
I felt oppressed every day.
Where did you live in 2000? Where were you living before you left the country?
Jounier.
Juni. Oh, okay. So I know. I think there were. I remember every time we crossed the checkpoint, heading north, so just past Jbeil,
Yeah.
that Mukhabarat
Yeah.
checkpoint. All the checkpoints on the old road, and then if you go a little earlier, the checkpoints that were in Beirut. I mean, you had to know what it was like to live here and be afraid.
Dude, they used to come wake us up at 6 a.m. in the morning, knock on our doors, walk in with guns, and my father had to hide in the attic. This has happened to us so many times. They would go in, push us around, search the whole house. My father was not allowed to have a passport until post 2005. One morning, I remember I had a basketball game with the school, and I was one of the better players on that team. I scored 2 because an hour before the game, I had just gone through that experience of them coming to the house again to search the house and to look for I'm having shivers talking about it.
If you don't mind me asking, and I can remove it if you don't want.
Yeah.
Is it related to anti-Syria?
Yeah, my father was Uwait.
He wasn't Uwait.
Yeah,
Okay,
he was
so,
a captain, yeah.
So
He's not Uwait anymore.
right.
He's not at all.
I'm very happy
Yeah.
you're saying this, because it's important for anyone who talks about that group, criticize Samir Jaja as much as you want, criticize the Uwait as much as you want. In 2004, that party was still banned.
But that's what I mean.
Yeah,
When
so-
in 2005, when I came back, I don't know how to say it without it sounding wrong, because somebody somewhere is gonna link it and probably say that, oh well, I'm Uwait. I'm not. I don't give a shit. I would not vote Uwait. Neither will my dad, by the way, who is completely opposed to Samir Jaja. But
I hope Aune.
no,
Okay.
no,
I'm joking.
no. But usually it's either or.
I know. I was gonna say like, oh no.
Because but you're right. There's no Aouni ideology. It's usually just Bashir supporter who hates Samir Jaja.
Right,
that's
exactly.
what it is.
Yeah.
That's all there is.
True.
That's the depth of the Aounist ideology. No, we're Christians. Who's the second best? We'll go for this guy.
No, but it's. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but yes, you're describing a moment where this party is not they're banned.
So
Samir Jaja is in jail.
But that's what I said when I said it's a different Lebanon. For me, coming back to a country where all of a sudden people could brandish the flag,
yes, exactly,
was absolutely insane.
Yeah,
because you have to understand on what visceral level this pokes me. You know, I grew up in that environment, in that persecution, being proper persecution. I'm telling you, man, like knocking on doors at random hours to come and like fetch him. We would have to call people all the time to get him out of jail and things like that. Like, it was not good. And to come back and see that all of a sudden people are allowed to brandish this flag, man, that was intense. That was ironically a liberating feeling. Even if it's a flag I would never brandish now, but I'm not for anything being banned.
Yeah,
I'm for every flag being. Now you have parties who beat you up if you're carrying the Lebanese flag.
that's true.
Yeah, that's the problem.
But I like you've got that perspective where you grew up in this country knowing what it was like. And therefore, these are not all toxic names right now for the reasons I think too many subscribe. I think it's unfair to treat everyone that was yearning for a Lebanon that they could fly the Uwait flag, for example, treating them as part of the problem.
Yeah.
There's a real misunderstanding, I think. It's a pure, almost like an extremist way of looking at it.
But of course, that's the polarized end of nuance thing I'm talking about. Because
exactly.
I'm telling you, I'm almost certain
Yeah.
if you keep this part in the podcast and somebody will hear it, I am 100% sure there will be an idiot saying, oh, this guy is Uwait.
Yeah.
No, I'm just giving autobiographical facts.
Yes.
I grew up in an Uwait household, just like everybody in this country grew up in a something household.
Mm-hmm.
I do not identify with the party. I do not vote for its members. That's all I can say. But I'm not gonna deny my past. I'm not gonna hide from it. I'm not ashamed of anything. I'm not
And also not ashamed that there was a time in your life where this party was being treated like a criminal organization by the Syrian regime.
Yeah.
And they were intimidating Lebanese, and this was an unjust reality.
But that's partly why I told you I grew up hating the country. I couldn't wait to leave.
Yeah.
To me, Lebanon was oppression.
Yeah.
Feel it every day. That's why I'm telling you, the 90s were horrible here. Horrible. The only escape we had was, people wonder why there was like a heroin epidemic in the 90s. What do you want kids to do then?
Yeah.
You're in the 90s in Kisirwen, where like you're literally that community that's khalas, completely cornered and like you can't do anything,
This was, I think, the one side of the story that people just don't appreciate.
They don't want to hear it.
They don't want to hear it, and they're unfair to, I think, anyone that still wants to reflect.
Yeah.
And I lose I think I lose patience sometimes when there's that absolutist way of looking at things, like, you just have to start from October 17, 2019, can't look back. I think you have to look back.
Who thinks like that? Children.
Oh, but
children. There's such an infantilization of culture in general in the world, and you see it here.
Yeah.
Who thinks without nuance? Who thinks in terms of good, evil only? Bad person, good person. These are the kids' tales. The
Yeah.
two-dimensional characters
Yeah.
with no depth, no complexity. Oh, this you think like this, so you're evil. If you think like that, you're good. This is how children think.
So what if the children are in their 30s?
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. What if the children are ambassadors?
Yeah.
And then the children are offering their own version of events that you know in your heart is false.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do other than just try to keep reminding people
Yeah.
that good people tried.
Yeah.
And what you're calling bad is not bad the way you describe it.
Yeah. I've said this on the other podcast when I said that it's so that puerile way of looking at our parents' generation and say, oh, you guys were bad people, you did the war.
Exactly.
Who thinks like that?
Yeah.
You have to be a child to think like that. These were people defending their households, defending from all across Lebanon, all parties. I'm really talking about all parties here.
Yeah.
They were people who didn't know any better. They were told there's a threat, and a lot of times there was an actual threat. They had to defend themselves. This is what happened. Does it justify it? No, it explains it. Explaining does not mean justify. Justify means make it just. This is not just, but it's explainable. It explains it so you can understand why this happens, and you have to acknowledge it so you don't repeat it. You can't just rebuff it as, oh, well, no, they were evil, we're better. What do you mean? Hannah Arendt wrote about the banality of evil.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, now there comes the philosophy card.
But I mean, even the worst crimes in human history, like the Nazi crimes, were committed by banal, normal bureaucrats.
Yep, that's true.
Because put in favorable context, this is how these people behaved.
Yes.
And if we don't acknowledge that and just say, oh no, there's good people and evil people in the world, and hopefully the good people will take over, well, good luck with your fairy tale, man. That's all I can tell you.
This gray between the black and the white is where I live.
Yeah.
And I get very turned off when there's absolutists.
Me too.
And especially when they have leverage. Because I think this country, if you blame Lebanese for who they are, and if you blame Lebanese for where we reached, and you blame everyone that tried to do something pre-October 17, 2019, you're blaming everybody.
Yeah.
There's nothing... And I still have this very soft spot for October 17. I still think that is just it's a very louder March 14.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's wrong to say that.
Yeah.
And when I don't want to divorce them.
Yeah.
I think it's the same root desire. Even though it's not independence right now, but maybe that is what it is at the end of the day, without us saying it on the streets all the time.
It is not independence from a physical military occupation, but we're quite close to that.
Very close.
Very close to that, man. Very close to that.